Well, happy Memorial Day, everybody. Welcome to our Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month Spotlight. And today we are spotlighting my dongseng, my little sister, Christina Bottley, all the way from New York City. Hi, Christina.
Hi. Hi, Priscilla. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to catch up with you today. So before we start, I'm going to share your amazing bio. So Christina, you are an actor, singer, musician, producer, music director, and voice and piano teacher extraordinaire. And you are a founding member of A Collective Artists, a New York City-based ensemble dedicated to the enlightening power of accessible and reflective theater. And you serve as the producing artist director and was the executive producer for their first show, a stage reading of a radio play inspired by H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds, titled War of the Worlds, Mosaic, written by Chris Booth. And it went on to be broadcast by WFJJ Radio Catskill. You own and operate Bottley Studios, teaching piano and voice to artists of all ages in New York. And you're a graduate of the prestigious Atlantic Acting School's Evening Conservatory, where you now work within the admissions department, and you're a member of the Actors Equity and Certified Steinway Educator. And currently you are in the process of writing a one-woman show to tell the story of your adoption from Korea. And it focuses on your narrative of being a Korean adoptee and your mother's harrowing story to bring you home. And we're gonna hear more about that. But how I know you is your amazing voice as an alto with Voices of Liberty at Disney World in Orlando. And everybody knows Voices of Liberty in Orlando, like the most amazing
Yeah.
acapella. I mean, what you guys are able to do is just, out of this world. And if anybody, when we get to open up and go travel, people need to go and hear Voices of Liberty. Okay, so we're gonna start with that mini video. Hey, I want to take us all the way back to you were born in Daejeon, Korea.
Mhm.
Tell us the story of how you were found.
Yeah, so my mom and dad really wanted to have a child, and they had at their church at the time, there was a Korean missionary and his wife who were there, and they had heard that my parents were looking to adopt, and they were having a lot of trouble, especially because my father was much older at that time. And so, people are always weary about giving a child to somebody who is much older. So through a lot of time and a lot of prayer, my parents said, okay, let's do this. And they had sent them a couple of pictures of babies. And my mom said, you were the tannest baby. And I didn't know if you were Korean. So,
That is such a Korean thing.
they picked me out. And, it was taking a little bit of time for the visa, but a little too much time was starting to go by, and my parents were sending money. They were sending clothes, formula, things like that. And after some time, I think about 5, 6 months had gone by, my mom was having this recurring dream of a Korean girl at the airport between the age of like 5 to 8, standing there with her suitcase. And my mom one day told my dad and said, I keep having this dream. And she said, I just feel that if I don't go to Korea, I'm not going to get my baby. Like, we're not going to see her. So my dad sold his beloved boat that he had at the time to be able to send my mom to Korea. And then she could have money, not only for the flight, but also to be able to get a hotel place to stay, things like that. And my mom got on a plane in 1985 by herself, flew to Korea, went to their door of their home and knocked. And when they opened, they were very surprised to see her. And she said, where is my baby? I want to see my baby. And they kind of refused to take her to see me where I was in this like area where these missionaries were staying, and I was with foster parents at the time. And my mom, being very persistent, as a lot of Korean women are, kept saying, "Take me to see my baby. I want to see my baby." And so 2 weeks later, they took her to see me. My mom wasn't very happy with the fact that I was about 6, 7 months at the time, and I looked a little smaller. They wouldn't let her hold me at first, which she was not happy about it either. So she really felt there was something going on that just wasn't right. And so in the middle of the night, I was crying. Nobody was coming to get me. So she went in and she brought crackers because I was very hungry. And she watched me eat. And she said that she just looked at me and said, "All right, let's go." And so she, in the like early morning in Korea, in the freezing cold, put me on her back, abuba,
Mhm.
and she took the bus to Seoul and went to the big adoption agency there. And for weeks on end, she would make this trip. And they continuously refused to give her my visa paperwork and any other information. And so my mom went back and she we were at that moment then staying with the people that she was working with the adoption for. And she was crying and I was like in this crib, and she said that I was playing peekaboo with her, and my mom was just like, "I don't think this is gonna work. I think I'm gonna have to go back, but I'll be back." But I kept making her laugh as a little baby. And so my mom said that it was at that moment she went, "Okay, we're going to do this. Let's do this." And so she called my dad and said, "Put on your military uniform." My dad served in the army for 23 years and Air Force for 2. And she said, she said, "Perm your hair, dye your hair, put on your uniform and get over here." And so my dad finally made it to Korea and walked into the building, and immediately things were different. And they had, he said, "I'm going to sue you." He just kind of was throwing all of these things out. And my mom said that when they went down and finally dug up my paperwork, there was a big, red mark with no on my visa work. And my dad was just fuming. And so immediately they started their paperwork because they didn't want to upset an American military personnel. So they immediately started the paperwork, and then my parents brought me home. So there's so
Wow.
many details within the story that I feel are very important to tell. And I've been inspired to write a one woman show, not only connecting with my mother and her strength through that time, but also just my own narrative as a Korean adoptee and what that means for me personally. And for that, I'm really exploring and looking to bring just joy within my own adoption, that I'm of how grateful I am for my mother and her sacrifice and my father. And I just want to be able to share that narrative with everyone.
Oh, Christina, I haven't heard that story, and it's such a beautiful story. And I'm glad that you're writing that and putting it out there forever so you don't forget. And what's unique, we talked about this. Like, I know many adoptees, but you're the
Mhm.
only adoptee I know who was actually adopted by a Korean mom.
Yes,
So we've been able to share a lot of funny stories of our Korean moms, and you speak Korean. And
I
so
do.
it's such an interesting thing because, we talk about this all the time. Being Asian is not a monolith. There's no right way to be Asian, and we all have our own
Mhm.
stories and our own journeys, and just what you've been able to do because of the love of your parents. And I think
Mhm.
that's so awesome. Um, I want to go. Okay, so let's fast forward. And you are singing at Voices of Liberty. Like, what was that like? How I do remember when you got the news, and it was like, "I'm singing with Voices
Yeah.
of Liberty." I mean, tell me from your perspective, because I was excited.
It was really a dream come true. I remember I was in high school and in choir, and every Christmas we would audition to be a part of the mass choir for their candlelight processional. And we got to go every year as an honor choir. And I remember being in that choir and seeing the Voices of Liberty and going, wow, one day that would be something that would be amazing to be able to do, to put on that red dress at Christmas and
Right.
sing on this stage with other high school students with the orchestra. And it was just something that I always cherished. And so uh, in like 2005, I started auditioning, and I got to a point where I was like, I'm not going to audition anymore. And I was working with a vocal coach at the time, John Cavazos, who was singing with Voices of Liberty at the time. And he, 6 months in, he said, they're doing holiday voices auditions. He goes, you should go. And I was like, no, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. I want to take this year to just relax and do my own thing and focus on my voice. He goes, listen, you just never know. He's like, go. So I went, maybe slightly unwillingly. And it was then at that moment that the casting director at the time said to me, he gave me a call back and he goes, I think I would really like to see you again. He's like, go work with John and come back and let's see, what you've got. So I went back to the callback. I made it through every round, which was, when I left, I was ready for a nap. It was very taxing, but it was just a great feeling to even have made it to the callback and be in the room with Disney casting and the music director, and to just be singing this music even for an afternoon. And so from there, I, like a month and a half later, I got the call and offering me a Christmas contract, and I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. I remember going to my first costume fitting and putting on the on the red dress, and I looked at the stage manager who said, well, what do you think? And I said, I never thought that I would ever put this dress on. And I said, this is a very surreal moment for me right now. And I just remember then going into rehearsal and sitting, and singing beside all these amazing people that I've, watched from afar since I was a kid, just seeing voices and then being in the room with them. It was just a moment that I will never forget.
So the music that you guys learn is very intricate. How many parts?
There's 8 parts. So when you're on the floor, there's 8, and it's definitely very intricately woven. You definitely have to know your part, be very solid on it, and also be really, it's a beauty of ensemble, working with an ensemble and moving together. And so really listening and feeling the music together. And of course, there's a very taxing rehearsal process as well, which is much needed. And there are a lot of, there are high expectations there. So it really, pushes you as an artist to go, okay, I've got to really discipline myself and to really learn this music, because you're a part of this ensemble and you don't want to let everyone down. So it just really, and because everyone is on this other level of just as singers, that you want to match that. And so it really drives you to work really hard.
So how long does it take you to learn a song? I know it varies, but when you were working at Voices of Liberty, I mean, that's a pretty taxing schedule.
It is. You learn 25 songs during the 2-week process. And every day you have to have, 3 songs from memory up and ready to go. You're up in groups of 8 rehearsing. And then once you're through that process, then you're learning a new song every week. So while you're then, whether you're a sub or you're full-time, then you're learning the music on your own. And then if you're full-time, then you're rehearsing, like on Fridays, you'll kind of do like a music check and then put it in the rotunda. So because you're really working those muscles, it starts to get easier and easier. And so, but at first you're like, how am I going to learn all this music? But again, the muscle memory and the work and the discipline, and repetition really.
So with that many hours of singing, how do you keep your voice healthy? What are some of your advice that you give to your students about keeping your voice healthy?
Sure. So, since I left Voices and went to the Atlantic Acting School, I really, we did voice class there, which was a big shift for me because it was a lot about just the body, the breath, and warming up the body itself. And so we learned a lot. We learned two different techniques. One that really has uh, changed my life as a singer and as an actor, which is the Fitzmaurice voice and body work. It utilizes a lot of yoga positions with tremoring. So it really works into your body to relax and really to let go of any nervousness, any tension. And so then it frees up the body. Then you're able to, it frees up the air as you're, then moving into vocal exercises and then to singing or before an audition, you can really take the technique and use it for wherever you are. So I really focus a lot of that with my students in just preparing the body, warming up the body, and using the body and connecting the air, and then bringing in the voice. Because if the body is about 80% warmed up, now you just have 20% to work on your voice. And so I've started really using this with my students in the last 3 years, noticed a huge difference. And my students, when I shifted to this technique, were like, this is so great. Like, I feel different. I feel more grounded. When they have auditions, they feel much more clear-headed going in the room, not as much nerves as they would. So it's been really rewarding, not only to see it for myself personally, but for my students as well.
So are you teaching remotely now?
Yes.
Lessons? Okay, so I can book a lesson with you.
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
good. I think I might have to book a series of lessons with you. I think people are going to be really glad that they stuck around to watch this, because we are in for a treat. It's Memorial Day, and with your dad being a veteran and my dad being a veteran, I could not pass up this opportunity to share your angelic voice with my friends, because you're just so amazing. And so you're going to sing a little part of America the Beautiful for us in honor
Yeah.
of Memorial Day. So hit it.
Oh, beautiful for heroes proved in liberating strife, who more than self their country love, and mercy more than life. America, America, may God thy gold refine, till all success be nobleness, and every gain divine.
And the crowd goes wild. Oh, that was so beautiful. Let's take a couple of minutes for you to tell us about your new project with A Collective Artists.
Yes.
Tell us about the ladies.
Yes. So, A Collective Artists, again, we're a New York-based ensemble. We are a 501c3, which we're very thankful to have that. But we just put up a show in October of 2019, which Priscilla, you'd mentioned, which was War of the Worlds Mosaic, inspired by H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds. We really decided as a collective, accessibility and representation is very important to us. And that's what our mission is. That's what drives our mission. And besides representation, the accessibility, how do we make theater accessible for the masses? There are a lot of places within the world where it's, people can't afford a Broadway ticket price, or even when a ticket price at their performing arts when a Broadway show comes through. So this was very an important conversation that we've had. And one of the things we've really, and there's a Staten Island ferry
Staten
that's
Island
kind
Ferry.
of coming through. So one of the things that we had kind of started diving into when we first started was this idea of sonic storytelling, bringing stories and telling them through audio and creating this experience. And so we had kind of workshopped a couple of different original works, and then when we were then approached by a arts alliance up in upstate New York, and they said, we have some free space in October, would you like to do a one night event? And of course, my artistic director Catherine Pulley and I were like, sure. At that moment, we had yet to be be incorporated, be a 501c3. We were like, we got to write a show. So within 60 days, more or less, we became incorporated in the state of New York. We got our 501c3 status,
Oh,
which is unheard of.
yeah.
And then we also were built not only building the company on a more an administrative side, but then we were also producing the show written by Chris Booth. So we were working with a playwright who had less than 60 days himself to write the show, which is unheard of, as So but we got it done. And then the end of October, we put up War of the Worlds, and it was an incredible experience. It was something where you really saw the spirit of collaboration and ensemble come together to work together. I think I attribute a lot of that, as a lot of us founding members are alumni from the Atlantic Acting School, which is ensemble. It focuses on being an ensemble. We really gathered that spirit and pulled together and made the show happen. And now we're starting to look into other original works or other plays out there that we can do sonically. So we're kind of working on putting that list together with also, representation in mind, because it's very important for us that all communities are represented. We want the world that we live in today to be on stage, because I think it's important, even as a Korean American growing up, that's kind of part of my narrative that I talk about within the collective is I rarely saw anybody that looked like me on TV film or on stage, aside from like Lea Salonga, it's like, God. So it's so important for me that if, as myself as an artist, if I'm going to inspire the next generation and generations to come, I want them to be able to come see a show and see themselves, see their stories being told. And in doing so, when their families come, they will be able to see their life, their stories on stage. And that's why I'm on this personal journey of writing this one woman show about my adoption. Because I think there are a lot of stories that are starting to be told about Korea, about the adoption process, about the struggles, the fights. And I feel that my story is a bit unique. Like we had spoken about my mom being Korean. I grew up with my culture. I grew up reading and writing. My mom taking me to Korean language school every Saturday from 9 to noon to learn my language. And I'm very thankful for it now. At the time, I was like 6 days of school, mom. This is ridiculous, and so that's been a big driving force. Is I want other adoptees who are the next generation to know, hey, we should celebrate our adoption. It's something that I feel is I'm thankful personally, because I have been blessed to have a wonderful life and wonderful parents who've definitely given me more than I could have ever imagined, and I want to share that narrative. And continue to go back anytime I talk to other artists, is we all have stories to tell, whether they're family stories. I love when you're always talking about your mom. I'm like, that's so relatable for a lot of people that are just not even just Korean, from the Asian culture. It's very relatable. And I just think that because we all have stories to share, that if you are inspired, tell your story, because even if gets to one person, that one person, it might help them, or it might give them just something to relate to in the world that we live in.
Wow. Well, hey, as we close out this visiting time, coffee chat, tell me something that is bringing you joy and putting a smile on your face during the quarantine.
Yeah, one thing that's I would say the main thing that brings me joy is just remembering for myself how good God is and how despite all the insanity in the world, he continues to bless and he continues to provide. He's he's there for us. And there have been ups and downs, especially being in New York City, and wondering when things will, in a way, get back to somewhat of a normal, uh, way of life. And it's been very hard not knowing what's going to happen with theater. When is that going to come back? But for me, I know that, uh, where my hope lies, and I live every day and I try to hold on to that hope and hold on to the love of Christ. And I know that there's nothing to worry about, that He's going to provide, He's going to take care, and that we're going to come out of this. And I believe we'll come out of it stronger than ever.
Sister, I can relate to that. We're an artist family as well. My husband is a
Hmm.
full-time musician. You and your husband are artists. And so, we feel that we had a lot of gigs canceled. And so, you're right, just trusting in God. And so, hey, thank you so much for your time. I am so glad we got a chance to catch up.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And send my best to your hubby. You guys just celebrated 5 years.
5 years.
5 years. Going
Yeah.
strong. Okay.
I know,
Um,
yeah.
and you guys be well. And I am going to take a voice lesson from you. I will reach out to
Okay,
you.
sounds good. I'll be waiting. I
Oh,
will be waiting.
yes, yes, ma'am. Okay. It's
Thank
good
you
to talk to
again.
you. Be
All
well.
right, bye.
Bye.